Hello again, everyone. This is my fourth attempt to record the second part of video series writing SocialNet in Go. I would like to show you what I have implemented first, and we will continue from where I left off. I have renamed all my users to match the browsers. So you can see that Firefox is now called Firefox. Safari is called Safari, and Google Chrome is called Google Chrome. Next, I tried to reduce the screen dimensions so that it has better quality, and you can see letters better, probably. I'll try to tell you about features that I implemented. So first, let me open the MySQL client. So I added timeline, and I'll talk about that later. So I have done the following. Now you do not see yourself in online list and a list of people you can talk to. Also, I changed the design a little bit so that you don't see these squares. Not maybe squares, but you don't see rounded rectangles. And I added timestamps, and I fixed the load more button so that it doesn't load duplicate messages. And I also probably nothing. Okay, so there is not very much. I added a timeline link that I will talk about later. So this is where we left off. So I added a little bit of functionality, but not so much. So as you can see, I started to add so-called timeline, which is the news feed of our friends. And actually, before we start to make timeline, we need to have actual friends, because now we see all people that are online, and when there would be thousands or probably millions of users that are online, it won't be very good to show all of them and allow to send messages to them. But probably for now we would assume that all are friends of each other, and when someone writes message in the timeline, then everyone else would see that, including the person that the person that wrote some message would see that he wrote that message. So for now, timeline doesn't do anything, as messages doesn't as well. But timeline is different link, so we show timeline here. But we don't need to show it. So I would like probably to start with the database layout. So what is our database structure? So every event in timeline would have its ID. Then the user ID that receives the timeline event copy, and the source user ID is user who generated this event, and the message text and timestamp in 90 seconds from Unix epoch. And of course, all events are indexed using user ID and timestamp. So, what should we do when someone writes a new when someone writes something in their timeline? If someone wants to share something with others, first we need to have some interface for that. And one of the simplest thing that we could do is to create another div with the timeline interface and show it when timeline is requested. So we would call it div class timeline, and it would contain the form like timeline form, and it would contain the input where you could write your messages. So tell us about something like in Twitter, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling today? And so we would have an input, and that would be timeline message, and probably that's it. So if we leave it this way, then we would have both messages and timeline showing in at the same time. That is not very good. So when we set up our page, where is it? We have set up messages page, yes. So we have set up messages page and set up we would have set up timeline page. Yeah, we don't have this function yet, but we will. So what should we do? Actually, we would probably need to write some function to hide everyone and to show only the appropriate subparts of our web page. So it would let's call it hide all, for example. So it would contain all the elements, all the tabs, and they are messages and timeline. And for each tab in it, for each tab in it, oh no, sorry, that's not how you iterate over an array in JavaScript. So for each tab we would hide it. So first we should hide everything. Then probably we would need to make this a global variable. It is not very good pattern, but we're writing in Go mostly and not in JavaScript, so I'll try not to spend too much time in JavaScript. So hide all and show. We will set up all pages and show current. What show current would do is it would analyze which URL we're having and show it as the current page. So the current URL is accessible using location, and we could log it, for example. And let's see, and let's comment setup timeline page. Let's see what we get into console. So we get type error that null is not object. Yeah, that's very good. Why is this? Messages and time. It's not ID. It's class name. But we could give it ID as well. So let's try again and again. So location has yeah. Let's try to do another. Let's try to use another browser, like maybe Chrome to debug. So maybe it would work better. So location is it contains a lot of properties. So one of them is path name. So if we go to, for example, timeline, we'll have path name that is equal to timeline. So what we should do is yeah, and you can see that there is no messages or timeline, or actually we do see messages but not timeline. That's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting why we don't see. Okay, but first we should determine which location we are at. So it would be something like for each tab we would check if location has /tab in it, and index of, as far as I remember, returns -1 if it didn't find anything. So if current location is this tab, then we show it. So like this. It's not the best JavaScript code, but I'll repeat that we're not trying to create an excellent JavaScript application, because the most interesting part is on the server side. So this would do, I think. So timeline should contain something. Yeah, it does already. So when a person clicks the messages link, there is some code that shows the messages, but I think that we probably could do a little better. So there is a so-called history API, and I don't recall how to use it, so we would Google it. So JavaScript history API. So yes, there is a method that is called history push state. Push state, replace state. Yes, so history replace state is so history replace state would state object replace state so you pass the title and URL, and we should try it. So we do history replace state of object optional data. So we could not pass anything, I suppose. At least I'll try not to pass anything, and we'll see how it works. So title would be messages, and URL would be messages. And what we'll do then is hide all and show current. So it would be a separate function that it would be like handle. We could actually wrap all this code into one function that would change URL in browser that user sees and trigger change of tab. So let's try it. Change location, something like that, and we would then write function change location that would accept title and URL, and would do history replace state. I don't know where we should get our object, so we'll try to skip it. So the idea is that when user clicks messages link, then it would change location to messages and show it. And when user clicks setup timeline page, that's we will load using another JavaScript. So it would be timeline.js, timeline.js. So it would be function that has set up timeline page, and so when user clicks timeline link, we would redirect him to timeline, and something that's is triggered when user presses enter in their timeline message input should be written as well. So we add event for timeline message, and for now we would just log that into console. So what we should get now is yes, we have set up timeline message, timeline page, and we have a link to timeline that has ID timeline link. So in theory, what we should have is showing of different tabs without any change of without any page reload. So yeah, undefined is not a function. Show current. Setup page. Show current. Okay, let's see. Location. Location. Undefined is not a function. I don't really get it. Why we get this error? So location is not what? Okay. Location itself doesn't have the index of method. So location attribute has location path name. Yes, location path name. It's that what we need. So we click messages and we go to messages, and we click timeline and we go to timeline. And it doesn't do page reload because we would see it in console when we reload page, because see, we have open when we reload, and it doesn't happen when we it doesn't write anything in the console, and you can actually see that there is no page reload. We are just switching tabs, and that is probably enough for start. So in Safari it should work in the same way, and as we replace the URL in browser, when you actually reload, you go to the corresponding section. So when we are in messages, when we reload page, we are still in messages, and we are in timeline, and we reload page, we still get to timeline. So let's then write some code that would display the timeline. And opposite to messages, we would show timeline, not the new entries would not be shown in the bottom, they would be shown in the top, at the top. So how are you feeling today? And so we have switched to Chrome. So what are you feeling today? We are feeling very good, thank you. And this is what we have in console, because we don't have any server code to handle that. So let's write this. Let's write the server code. So what we should write. I would start with SQL queries that we need to do. So the first thing is that when user writes something, we need to copy the timeline to all users that are users' friends. So in our case, we need to copy it to all users that are present in our system, because we assume that everyone is friend with each other. So first is we need to do an insert into MySQL we need to insert the timeline into timeline. So this would be messages, this would be authorization, and the following section would be timeline queries. So add to timeline, and of course another thing that we will always do is select from timeline. So get from timeline. So what are these queries? These queries are the following. Add to timeline would be insert into timeline with user ID, source user ID, message, and timestamp. So it would be 4 values. Couldn't prepare, add to timeline. Next would be select from timeline. So get from timeline. Select would be similar to messages. So it would be select user ID, source user ID. No, we don't need user ID at all. We need source user ID, message, and timestamp, and that's all. Source user ID, message, and timestamp when the event happened. From timeline, where user ID is ourselves. We do not need to put any filters to users that to source user ID, because it is your timeline, so you receive all the events of all your friends. And of course we order by timestamp descending, and we limit it. So sounds pretty simple. Prepare get from timeline. I don't expect it to build, but it did. So okay, that's the first step. So we have SQL queries. Next we should think about requests that we're going to send. So requests that we're going to send are request would be request add to timeline. So when we request add to timeline, we specify only message and timestamp. And we do not specify timestamp actually, because it is current timestamp. So we only specify message that we are going to send. And replies would be reply to the fact that the request was satisfied and that you actually added to timeline. It would be reply generic that I added between the first part and this one. So it contains only one field. And of course reply to get timeline. That would contain messages as well, but it would contain timeline messages. So we should define what timeline message is, and it would definitely have the ID. Source user ID, message and timestamp. So source user ID. And these are strings. So the thing is that when we send events, we could actually send it as strings, not as integers, and it is not too good to do this way, but I think that we will try to we will send strings now, and then we will try to think about better communication structures that we use for our channels communication, so that we do not have to use strings, and so we could use integers instead. So for now we will send string. And messages string, message text actually, and timestamp. Thing is that we send timestamp as string so that JavaScript doesn't mess up the number inside it, because JavaScript only normally supports 32-bit and we send 64-bit instead. So in order for JavaScript not to mess up the timestamp, we pass string instead, so that we can pass string back to us as a token for the next timeline events. So that's our timeline message. So it is user ID that wrote this. Oh, actually, there is one more thing. You do not really usually users don't really like IDs. They like they like names. So we would probably remove the word source from response, because it's obvious that it's not your messages, and we will include username here as well. And the query should select username as well. And for now we can do it by doing inner join. And rewriting our query a little bit, so, or better, left join. Left join users, where user ID is timeline source user ID, and everything else remains the same. But when we are going to shard our databases, we no longer can use join to user. We cannot no longer afford the join to users table, because it would we do not necessarily place all users' friends into the same database. So if users are spread between several databases, then there would be no entries for users where the timeline is. So this is not the best thing to do, but for now we will left join and think about sharding later, if we do it all. So Yes, and we should actually select it, and we would select user name. Yes, so our reply contains our reply contains the timeline messages, and each timeline message contains username. Nice. So next thing that we do is define some constants so that we can use auto-completion, and we can later find these requests. So request get timeline, and request add to timeline. So this is what we do. Next thing that we do is yes, the next thing that we do is write handlers for this. So where do we have this? Event handler. Yes, in event handler we receive user requests. So here we see that there are a couple of handlers already. So if request type equals request get timeline, that's we write in that we pass as a string from JavaScript, because constant values in integers could be different on server and on client, so strings probably are pretty good way of doing this. So we allocate the user request type and try to unmarshal that. So request get, we don't have type for request get timeline. So request get timeline would be pretty similar to get messages, but get timeline. It would be similar to get messages, but we do not need to specify the user that we are talking to, because we accept events from all users. Yes, so a new request get timeline. We unmarshal that. And go process get timeline. And we write handler for that. So we could probably get, yeah, something like process get messages would be similar to get timeline. So process get timeline. It would be the same, that if we don't specify the end date, then it is assumed that it is current timestamp. Then timeline limit would be different from messages limit, so we should specify it as well. So it would be max timeline limit. but we will have it set to the same value of 100. Makes sense. Max timeline limit. So if limit is less than 0, then we reject it. It's exactly the same code as in request get messages, but when we write more code and add more features, you will see that timeline and messages are not the same, so it is okay to leave this copy-paste for now. So then we get timeline, get from timeline, and it is actually a statement, so we should call it statement. And so these are statements. Get timeline statement query, and we specify only 3 arguments. Yes, we specify user ID, timestamp, and limit. So there they are, and can select timeline. If we have some error, then we report it. We reply with reply get timeline. So reply type would be reply. Yes, so we should define reply as well. So reply get timeline, and reply get timeline would be reply. Yeah, it would be the same. So reply get timeline. It would be timeline messages. Timeline messages. So we iterate all rows, and we actually need to close them as well. And this is what is and we forgot to do this here. Because if we do not iterate rows fully, then the connection that we were reading from will be dirty, and it will cause problems for us. So we shouldn't do this. So we should always close the result set that we got. Okay, so we get timeline message, and as we select so we select ID, source user ID, name, message, and timestamp. So scan message ID, message. Okay, I already forgot. Okay, so ID, source user ID. Source user ID is just user ID. Then username, message text, and timestamp. Okay. So we append this and send it to event flow that would be user reply. So it has a lot of common code that we can see here, but we'll think about how to get rid of this this particular pattern that we have to copy now. So we send user reply, and we could try to send something to a browser. So first we need to add some entries. For example, user ID. Okay, Chrome is user ID 2. So for user ID 2, from user ID 1, message would be hello from Safari. So actually all users should see this. So as it is timeline that all users see, then and timestamp would be Unix timestamp in 90 seconds. So we need to update timeline, set test timestamp to Unix timestamp in 90 seconds. So something like this. Okay. So we have our first messages in timeline, and I think that our code doesn't compile too well. So we cannot use user request as type request get messages. Yes, we didn't request. We actually request get timeline here. Couldn't prepare get from timeline. Table social users doesn't exist. So it's not users, it's user. Okay, so it works now. Okay, now we need to send a request to get the timeline. So what we are going to do is to get something like we already have for messages, and modify it. So we show the response. No, we're not ready for this yet. So we need to send the request to get messages. So yes, show messages, for example, would be okay. So show timeline. We do not have message current ID and don't have user 2, so we only specify limit here. This default timeline limit. Default timeline limit would be, for example, 10 entries. And for now we would just log a reply to console. So let's see. Actually no one calls show timeline, and PHP Storm shows that, so we could call it ourselves. So we got messages, empty list of messages, because it is wrong request. So our request should be request for timeline. So request get timeline. Okay, so sorry. request get timeline. Oh no, not here. In timeline. So reply get timeline. We will log the results in console, and show timeline would should return us the answer, and invalid request type reply get timeline. Yeah, because it should be request get timeline. So yes, we received an answer with the object that has hello from Safari. I think that we don't have too much time left to implement the rest, the send of message and showing of message. Oh, sorry, send. We don't have too much time to implement sending of timeline events and showing it to users, but I think that you got the idea, and next time we will try to finish this and add some more features, like for example notifications about new messages or new timeline events and so on. So thank you for watching, and expect new parts in some near future.